Hey, what's going on, everybody? Can you see me now? Give me some hearts. Give me some thumbs up. Let me know you're out there. Let me see who's in my audience this evening. To Angela Nolan Cooper. Okay, there's Monty. Okay, Monty's in the house. Donald Washington. What's up, brother? How you doing, Donald? Chi-Town checking in. All right. We got Jeff Barron. Carolina. Oliveira is out there. All right, I see you. Levon Clemens. Classic. Yeah, Jeff Brick City. Mike. Monty. All right. Okay, I got my riders with me tonight. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. birthday holiday. Yes, one of our great ones, one of our luminaries. I remember when we marched to make that a holiday in the early 80s. Abdulaziz Aiken, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Yeah, we marched in the streets, man, to make that happen. When I was younger, I didn't really understand Dr. King. Angela Cooper, hey, my sister. I really was more of a Malcolm guy. I was more on the militant side, but we needed them both. We needed both of those great men. So, it's a great thing that we can, celebrate his birthday and, try to remember what the man stood for, which was getting our civil rights here in this country. And he did a good job. And he paid the ultimate price for that struggle. And so we owe that man a debt of gratitude, as well with Malcolm X. We needed both of them. Ibn Tamir, my brother from Howard. Who's that there? Ismail Abdulaziz. Okay, my Ismail, he's watching. It's great to have you guys with me tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about this hot new film on Amazon. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Christopher Blake. Everyone's weighing in. Thank you. May Allah bless you too, brother. And, give me some hearts, folks. It makes me feel good. I can get my flow on when I know I'm getting the love. We're talking about this hot new film on Amazon Prime, One Night in Miami. It's a fictional dramatization of one night, February 25th, 1964, in Miami at the Hampton House Motel, after the young 22-year-old Cassius Clay, brash young fighter, defeated the heavyweight champion of the world, Sonny Liston. It finds him in the Hampton House Motel, which was in the black part of town, because that's how it went in those days, with three of his illustrious friends. Check out who his friends were. The great running back Jim Brown. The great crooner Sam Cooke. And also the incomparable Malcolm X. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a night like that? Well, that's what the film is all about. It imagines that night. It makes no pretensions of being historically accurate. In fact, the director, who is the director of this thing? The sister, I'm just having a brain. Regina King. I'm sorry, my sister. Sister Regina King, who is the director. She says it's not history. You can't watch it as history. And I'm glad she said that. because it does take a lot of license with the history. That it does. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about tonight, kind of, untangle, kind of extract some of the history from the fiction, to the extent that it's possible, because it's very difficult to do. The screenplay actually began as a play that was staged around 2013 by a Howard alum, a brother by the name of Kemp Powers. Kemp Powers from Howard University. Howard representing, Howard alum. The play has received universal acclaim from the African American community. And I understand why. I know why. And I am here to also sing its praises. Anytime you can get men like Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay at that time, and Jim Brown on the screen, on the big screen, first on the stage, then to the screen, under the creative, directive power, her directorial debut, Sister Regina King, the great actress. Anytime you can make that happen, it's a success. Anytime you can get the black man on the big screen portrayed in a dignified, intelligent, suave, sophisticated, intelligent, intellectual manner and depiction, it's a success. And we thank our sister Regina King because I've listened to many interviews of her, and you can tell her love and devotion to this project. And more importantly, you can see the deep and abiding love that this woman has for black men. This sister loves her black men. And, that is an important thing nowadays because we've had so many females in Hollywood who have dogged black men, taken every opportunity to take shots at us and run us down. People that we should expect to be in our corner. I'm not going to name any names, but you know who I'm talking about, all right? Never miss an opportunity to take a shot against the black man in America. But Sister Regina King, who, has had to struggle her way in Hollywood, in the entertainment field. There's a little, Sister Regina King is a black woman. She's not ambiguously black. She's not exotic, Ain't nothing mulatto or exotic looking about Regina King. Regina King is a black woman, and that Hollywood is brutal on giving dark-complected sisters roles in Hollywood. You know it. Roles of any dignity, if there's any roles at all. But this sister has made it in that industry without degrading herself, without belittling herself, by not taking, belittling roles and roles that make us look bad as a people. So I salute the sister for her taking on this project. It has been an enormous success, and I'm happy for her. I'm happy for Brother Kemp, who wrote it and then translated it into a movie script, took his play, which was winning awards all over the world. Congrats. It's a success. And so we want to celebrate that. Now, can you just imagine these four brothers in a room after a night like that? You're going to have to suspend whatever you know about the history. In fact, one could even say that the more you know about the actual facts of the history behind it, the more difficult it is to watch, in all honesty, because it is a creative work. It's a fictional work. It's creative. And that's always been, the dilemma, right? You have the creative people, and then you have people like me, the history people. Okay. And to be honest with you, I watched it because so many of our people were watching it and singing his praises. And of course, Malcolm is in it. All right. So people wanted to know what I thought about it. So I'm going to share some thoughts with y'all tonight. However, I normally don't watch these kind of things because it's very difficult to watch. When I see all things out of order and chronologies change and names change and this and that, and, imaginary conversations and stuff like that, it's kind of jarring. It's kind of jarring. But I had to watch this, and I can see why. Our people love it, and rightly so. Now, let me tell you what Brother Kemp Powers, the brother who wrote the script and the play, this is what he said. He said there's a certain amount of fictionalization in all of it. If you see something that says, quote, based on a true story, you can easily start poking holes in the truth behind it because it's never 100% true. In fact, if it's Hollywood and it says based on a true story, half the time it's more fiction than the things that say fiction. If anything, I used a lot more reality and fact in this story, but I didn't want to be burdened by that. Okay, he didn't want to be burdened by the history, the facts of what happened. He wanted to be creative and write and produce this work of art. I want the debate to wash you over. I don't want someone to be focused on whether something really happened. Okay, so don't approach this in any shape, form, or fashion as a historical work, okay? Because your mind is going to be spinning. And to be honest with you, some of the opening scenes right from the beginning, it took me aback. All right, and I'll explain some of what I saw, but I wanted to praise the work first. Praise Sister Regina King, Brother Kemp Powers, for this fantastic piece that gives our community an opportunity to celebrate these great illustrious brothers. And I want to just kind of mention the cast real quick, or some of the main players in the cast. Jim Brown is played by Brother Aldous Hodge. Malcolm X is played by Kingsley Benadier. Cassius Clay is played by Eli Goree. Sam Cooke is played by Leslie Odom Jr. And Sister Betty X. Shabazz, Malcolm's wife, is played by Jaquina Kalukango. All right, salute to them. They did a stellar job, and it's acclaimed. It's a success. But again, the history, you got to suspend what you know if you're going to watch this. I get this question all the time when it comes to these types of based on a true story, things like that. This particular film is sort of like those stage plays or productions where they bring, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X together in a room. What would happen if they spent a day together, spend some time together? And, you kind of imagine, the kind of discussion they would have, the kind of debates they would have, the kind of intellectual back and forth they would have. It's that kind of piece. That's what this kind of piece is. What happened that night, or what possibly could happen that night in the Hampton House Motel between Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, and Sam Cooke. Now, for historians, we always we sigh sometimes because we know the power of these films. And we also know that Americans in general and many, many of our people simply don't read. They don't read. So when they watch a movie, a play, some type of fictional dramatization of a historical or something based on historical fact, they take it as historical fact. And that's the problem, you know. They take it as historical fact. Let me give you an example. I get asked all the time about a character in Spike Lee's movie on Malcolm X. Brother Baines. The Brother Baines character. Okay? I get asked all the time, who was Brother Baines? Can you tell me about Brother Baines? Is Brother Baines the one who brought Malcolm the teachings? Is Brother Baines the one who woke him up? So on and so forth, right? Well, the truth of the matter is that Brother Baines, the Brother Baines character, is a fictional character, but he represents three different people. Okay? So he's a composite. He's a fictional composite of three real-life individuals who was in Malcolm's life. Okay? Number one is the character Bimby. In the autobiography, Bimby is the man who worked on the license plate line, pressing the license plates. And he was the prison intellectual. Very light-skinned brother. Malcolm said he was a red Negro that looked just like him, with freckles and what have you. Malcolm didn't have freckles, but he was red, like Malcolm, light-skinned, reddish complexion. Bimby was the man who turned him on to the life of the mind. Turned him on to books and really reading and learning how to exert his influence through the power of his mind and the power to speak and to debate and to argue and to, formulate. It was Bimby who turned him on to the life of the mind in prison. And in fact, just last year, we learned the true identity of Bimby. Bimby's real name is John Elton Bembry. And the Bembrys are from North Carolina. And all of these years, almost 60 years, 55 years, that we've had the autobiography of Malcolm X, this central figure in Malcolm's life, almost nothing was known about him. In fact, right after Who Killed Malcolm X aired, that was going to be the next thing on my plate, to drill down on this man Bimby. Okay, he was a career burglar. Who was he? What did he look like? What did he even look like? Can you imagine? All these years. But come to find out, John Elton Bembry, or Bimby, has a nephew who is a sports writer for ESPN, the Undefeated, the website. Can you believe that? And it just so happened that he did all the work for me, better than I could ever do, because last year he published an article on the life of his uncle, John Elton Bembry, or Bimby, in which he gave us photographs, a young photograph of him, and a photograph of how he would have looked when he was in prison with Malcolm. It just so happened that as Malcolm was entering into the Charleston State Prison, the first prison that he went to, Bimby was on his way out. Okay, Bimby was getting ready to leave prison. And the story talks about how Malcolm, after he got out and became the great Malcolm X, how Bimby would visit his great rallies in Harlem and cheer on his protege. So, yes, Brother Baines is Bimby, number one. Number two, Brother Baines represents Malcolm's brother, Reginald, his younger brother, the last to accept the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who brought him the teachings in prison, or he introduced him to the teachings in prison, in the Norfolk State Prison Colony. Okay, and also Bimby represents, let's say, a John Ali type character, corrupt Chicago official in the Nation of Islam, let's say like a John Ali, who does appear in Who Killed Malcolm X. The infamous alleged or suspected FBI agent, John Ali, who becomes one of Malcolm's chief nemesis and arch enemies in the Nation of Islam. So Bimby has to, represent all those characters. Why? Because Spike was already dealing with a movie that was over 3 hours long, which is crazy in Hollywood. You can't make money with a 3-hour movie. You've got to, you've got to be, 90 minutes, 2 hours, because you've got to show it so many times in the theater for it to make money. If you got a 3-hour and 20-minute movie, you can't make much money in the theater. All right. So Spike Lee worked hard just to get the movie done. Okay. Relinquished his salary and everything. We all know the story about that. But sometimes you have to do that. You have to take creative license to drive the story forward. But the thing is now, this younger generation, 28 years later, since the appearance of that film, they watch the movie and they think Brother Baines is a real person. Okay? And that's what happens. And so, we have concerns about these fictional dramatizations based on historical facts, especially when they involve people like a Malcolm X, a Sam Cooke, a Jim Brown. All right, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, okay, Cassius Clay. I mean, all four of these people have their own biography. All right, there's a lot that we know about these men. So it's kind of hard to fictionalize their lives of this one night, all right, because we know a lot about what happened that night. I mean, at least we historians do. We have footage, we have transcripts, we have interviews, we have newspaper articles, we have so much. So when we're watching this fictional dramatization, sometimes it can be kind of jarring. That's the point I'm getting at. And so you have to just kind of, like I say, put your critical thinking to the side. Not your critical thinking. I'm saying that wrong. You have to suspend reality for a moment and just enjoy the art of the production. Now, let me tell you what I found in this thing that I found interesting. Let's talk about the history versus the fiction. Now, in the beginning, for those of you who've seen it, there's like 4 different introductions where you see each man in his own setting, in his own world, right? You see Sam Cooke on the stage, you see Jim Brown, you see Malcolm, you see, I'm losing track of who these people are. Jim Brown, Malcolm, Sam Cooke, and Cassius Clay. All right. You see, you'll see Sam Cooke on the stage. You'll see Malcolm in a clip on television, and so on and so forth. When they got to the segment on Malcolm, all right, the scene opened up. There's a television. On the television, you see a black and white news show hosted by Mike Wallace. We all know what that show is. It's called The Hate That Hate Produced. Okay, you see Malcolm's wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz, or back then Betty X Sanders. She's watching her husband in this news program. She walks over to the television. Well, you see Malcolm speaking in it. All right, you see the Malcolm character speaking in it. And, you see the Nation of Islam scenery. You see the sisters in white and the brothers standing on posts and so on and so forth. Okay, this is a very famous documentary that was done on the Nation of Islam. She goes and turns the television off. And as she turns the television off, Malcolm X walks through the door. Okay, he walks through the door almost as if he's coming from this event. Okay? Now, here's what drives us crazy, the historians. This film is taking place in the winter, January, February, okay, of 1964. But the program on the television aired in 1959, The Hate That Hate Produced. Okay, so we got a 5-year, I'm watching them, whoa, okay. And then, where's Malcolm coming from? He's coming from a meeting that he just had with Lewis X, Minister Lewis X from Boston. We all know who that is, right? Where's my Malcolm X scholars? You all know who that is. Uh-oh, Tierra, I see you, Tierra. Shout out to Tierra Turner. She's watching. Lewis X is Louis Farrakhan. And supposedly, Malcolm was trying to recruit Farrakhan into his new organization that he's going to start. Now, anyone who knows the history knows that, honestly, that's kind of preposterous, okay, for a lot of reasons. And you see his wife, Betty, she's going on. Doesn't he knows that old man is corrupt and dealing with all these women, with these babies. He's talking about all of Elijah Muhammad's corruption, And Malcolm is saying, well, he's devoted to him, he's religious or what have you, whatever. And I'm saying, wow, this is very interesting. Okay. So what I like to share with you the real history here, what was going on here. At this time, we're talking about now mid-January, or let's see at this scene, let's backtrack. Malcolm went down. Why did Malcolm go down to Miami in the first place? Okay, why did he go down in the first place? What brought him to Miami? What brought him to Miami, if this is February 25th, 1964, all right? So he was suspended from the nation, from speaking, on December 1st, 2nd. He was sat down, he gave a speech at the Manhattan Center December 1st, 1963, and he was sat down the next day. And he was suspended for 3 months, right? So December, January, February. He's coming to the end of his 3-month suspension, but he's suspended, all right? Malcolm is suspended. He can't speak in public. He can't address the press. He can't address his following. You get the picture? That's when this time frame of this film happens. So it's impossible for Malcolm at this point to be talking about recruiting Louis X or Louis Farrakhan, because by this point in the history, okay, Louis Farrakhan has already replaced Malcolm. Okay? He's already taken Malcolm's place as the chief spokesman for the nation. Okay, if not in the official title, he will get the title. The fight took place on February 21st, 1964, right? The next day, The next day, February 26th, was the Nation of Islam's convention, Savior's Day. Normally, Malcolm would be the biggest speaker before Elijah Muhammad. But do you know who took his place at the Savior's Day? That's right, Louis Farrakhan. So why would Louis Farrakhan, who for years was mentored by Malcolm and wanted the man's spot? Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. All right. He wanted Malcolm's spot in the nation. Okay. And he ultimately got it, right? He ultimately got it. But he's got it now. Why would Malcolm be having a meeting with him to try to recruit him into his new organization, right? When he's got Malcolm's job now. And, at this point, Malcolm is not out. He hasn't broken yet. Okay, he's not going to break for another almost 2 weeks because he officially broke March 8th. Okay, so, he hasn't broke yet. So, Farrakhan knows he's in trouble. He knows Malcolm is on thin ice. He knows Malcolm is probably never going to get reinstated again, but he still has a semblance or some remnant of warm feelings for Malcolm. All right. And I'd like to read from Manning Marable's The Life of Reinvention. What happened the last time that Malcolm met with Farrakhan, okay, or Louis X. Not the way it's depicted in the film, but what actually happened, all right? Because around the same period, Malcolm met with his old friend and protege, Louis X, for the final time. By now, after Louis had reported back to Muhammad Malcolm's discussion of his affairs, it had become clear that Louis's loyalty to Elijah Muhammad was paramount. Still, their friendship had been severely strained. The feelings between them persisted. Louis was asked to speak in Malcolm's place on several Sundays during his suspension, and when Louis came down from Boston, he met with Malcolm despite the prohibition against contacting a member under sanctions. See, that's the thing. When you get put in suspension, you have some sanctions against you in the Nation of Islam, no other member is supposed to meet with you. You're kind of like boycotted. All right? So Louis was violating by meeting with Malcolm this last time. If he did not... okay, hold up. Malcolm even drove him to the mosque to deliver the Sunday speeches. So you got the picture? Malcolm is picking up Louis X from the airport. He's driving him to his own mosque, number 7. And he's speaking in Malcolm's place because Malcolm can't speak. All right? Farrakhan later came to interpret Malcolm's split with the Nation of Islam in somewhat unusual terms. He believed that Elijah Muhammad had been testing Malcolm for leadership and that he had failed that test. But by the time of their final meeting, Louis had already been chosen by Muhammad as Malcolm's replacement. All right, let me read that again. Louis had already been chosen by Muhammad as Malcolm's replacement. As the speaker for the 1964 Savior's Day, and the Boston minister was clearly being groomed to assume a significant leadership role, probably Malcolm's. And let me just go on here. Here's what Farrakhan had to say how the last meeting went on. Their last meeting together. On their last outing together, Farrakhan remembered they cruised the city late into the night in Malcolm's Oldsmobile. This is Farrakhan speaking. He told me of his love for Evelyn, and he was going to bring her to New York. That's Evelyn Williams, one of the women that got impregnated by Elijah, one of his secretaries. She was an old girlfriend. an old flame of Malcolm's in Boston. Yeah, Malcolm was tore up about that. That Elijah had violated his old squeeze, you know. I said, brother, please don't do that. You would really hurt Betty if you did that. It's best that you leave Evelyn where she is. We had that type of conversation. And he sat with me and he said, quote, brother, my enemies will one day be your enemies. And he named people that I would have to look out for in the nation. And then he said these words to me, quote, I wish it was you being an example for me rather than me being an example for you. That's the last conversation that I held with my brother. So that's how Farrakhan says that it went. Now, of course, that's controversial, right? That's controversial because it has Farrakhan saying that Malcolm still had feelings for Evelyn Williams. And, you know, there was some possible problems in his own marriage. That's you know, it's a controversial subject. I'm just reading what is in the book and what Farrakhan has said. You know, he's talked about that last meeting many times. Okay. And you can believe him or not believe him. But the point is, Malcolm, no way in the world could have pulled Farrakhan at that point in the history. All right. Now, also, so we dismiss that. You know, that's where we have to put the history to the side and enjoy the production. Enjoy the film. And Sister Betty and Malcolm talk about Malcolm going down to Miami, the training camp of Cassius Clay, in order to recruit him to join Malcolm's new organization. Okay? So, if I would say I would have one big problem with the film or critique or criticism of it, it would be to portray Malcolm in a way that he was plotting or scheming to peel off the talent from the Nation of Islam for, one brother said, there was a problem in this marriage. That's a fact. The brother who just made that comment is the son of Brother Benjamin 2X Kareem, Gamal Kareem. So, I mean, you know, that's from him. That's his, he has more information about those things than I do. I mean, his father was one of the chief ministers with Malcolm. He introduced Malcolm. Benjamin 2X Kareem, the brother who just commented, his father introduced brother Malcolm at the Audubon Ballroom right before his assassination on February 21st, 1965. Okay, so there's a lot of folks close to the story who are in my audience. So you read their comments; they'll tell you a lot of information. So yes, the story portrays Malcolm, and this is my criticism of it. It portrays Malcolm as plotting and scheming to peel off the talent of the Nation of Islam, and the future star Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay. It accuses him of going down to Miami to try to pick him off and bring him into his new organization that he's going to establish once he leaves. However, we know from the history very well that Malcolm went down to Miami because Muhammad Ali invited him. He wanted him to get some rest and relaxation. He loved Malcolm and looked up to him as a big brother. This was meant to be a vacation. It was meant to be an anniversary and a honeymoon, because Malcolm and Betty, they never had a honeymoon and they never had a vacation. And this would have been the 6th anniversary of their wedding. They got married January 14th, 1958. So this was an exact time, 1 month before the fight. Muhammad Ali invited them down, Malcolm, Betty, and the 3 girls, to go down to Miami and have a honeymoon and relax, and clear his head, get his head straight, and just, spend some time with his family. And that's what Malcolm did. This was January, 1 month before the fight. The fight was February 25th. This was January 15th that they went down there. And they stayed from the 14th or 15th to the 19th, when Betty Shabazz, I call her Betty Shabazz, I can't call her Betty X, but she's Betty X at this time, Betty X Sanders. After about 4 or 5 days, she goes back to New York. She takes the family back to New York. All right. And Malcolm, he hung around a couple of days, and then he and Muhammad Ali made a visit to New York. And now remember, he's in training. Okay, he's in training camp or whatever. I mean, he done broke camp. Left Angelo Dundee and left them all high and dry. He's hanging out with Malcolm in Harlem. All right. Now, this created problems for Muhammad Ali. And you'll see that in the film as well, where you see the Angelo Dundee character getting in Cassius Clay's face about this, because it started getting in the media that Cassius Clay was possibly becoming a Muslim, a black Muslim. Okay? And the black Muslims taught that all white people are the devil. All right? The same white people who were paying for Muhammad Ali's training camp, that was sponsoring him, the same white business people who were backing his fight, okay, that were going to pay him his purse, all right? These were the people that the Nation of Islam were calling the devil. And this would have been bad for business. But this was getting out. Once Malcolm and Cassius was seen in Harlem, whatever, the media and the sports writers, they started writing, you know what I mean? And created a stir, created a problem. So then what happens is Malcolm stays in New York. Muhammad Ali goes back to the training camp. And then the story picks up right before the fight on the 25th. A couple of days before the fight, Malcolm flies down there by himself without Betty. All right? And that's, I guess, where the story, in the series or in the film, where it picks up. But the problem that I have is it portrays Malcolm trying to pull Muhammad Ali into his new organization, which was not his intention at all. If he had an intention, it was to try to get back in the nation, to try to use his relationship, to leverage his relationship with Muhammad Ali, right, to come back into the nation. At this point, the nation is not acknowledging Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay at that time. They're not acknowledging him. You know why? Because they thought he was going to get his butt whooped. All right? This braggadocious, brash, arrogant, sometimes crazy acting young man, he was going to get his behind whooped. And the nation didn't want to hurt their brand by being associated with this bum. All right, this man he's clearly going to get destroyed by Sonny Liston, and that wouldn't have been a good look to be lifting him up. But they knew that he was deep in the nation. At this time, Muhammad Ali has been in the nation, not formally in the nation, but intellectually, he's been committed to the nation and his teachings for a long time. See, many people think, and the film it suggests that Malcolm actually brought Muhammad Ali into the nation. That is not true. That is a myth that has been out there a long time. Muhammad Ali first got exposed to the Nation of Islam in 1959. He was only 17 years old, okay, when he was just a high school kid, and he had to go to Chicago to fight in a Golden Glove bout, all right, in Chicago, which was the headquarters of the Nation of Islam. So of course he got exposed to the brothers there selling the papers and selling the tapes and records. I don't know if they sold tapes in those times, but they sold records. And he bought a record of Elijah Muhammad, one of his lectures. And keep this in mind as well. Muhammad Ali came from a Garveyite family. His father, Cash, was heavily influenced and subscribed to the teachings of Garvey. So the Nation of Islam, is Garvey with a religious veneer on it. Okay, it's a religious Garveyism. So this teenage kid buys the record. He goes back to Louisville, and he's studying it. He's listening to it, and he agrees with it. He agrees with it. Do for self. Black man, do for self. Right? The white man is our mortal enemy. He is the Yaqub's grafted devil. Okay? The snake of the planet Earth, and this and that and the third. Okay? you know the story. So around 1961, Cassius Clay now he's training on the pro level. So he's at a training camp in Miami, and he comes across a brother selling papers, a very light-skinned brother by the name of Sam Saxon. They called him Captain Sam. Skinned brother. And he has, I believe, sadly, he passed away before we aired Who Killed Malcolm X. He was a very senior gentleman. But he is the one who invited young Cassius to the mosque in 1961 there in Miami. It was a very, very small mosque, But whoever the speaker was, he must have really lit it up, because Cassius was at that point, he was committed. Not formally in, but he mentally, intellectually, he agrees with it. He's down with it, but he has to play it cool, because he's got all these white sponsors, and he's got to play the game. So he's got to, in Islam, they call it taqiyya, or dissimulation. He's got to dissimulate, dissemble, all right, and hide where he's really at. It wasn't until 1962 that he actually met Malcolm. And Malcolm was already quite famous at this point, all right? And this was in Detroit. It was in a luncheonette adjacent to the mosque, Muhammad's Mosque number 1 in Detroit, the first mosque where it started, in a little luncheonette. Cassius Clay was there with his brother Rudolph, or Rudy, today known as Rahman. And this is where he first met, the great Malcolm X. And, the two men immediately took to one another. Muhammad Ali's personality, okay? Gregarious, showman, what have you. He was that way ever since he was young. And, of course, Malcolm, being Malcolm, all right, the man who, electrified audiences the world over, they just hit it off. And Cassius took him as a mentor. And some writers say that it's actually Malcolm who sealed the deal for Cassius in terms of coming into the nation. That could be true, could not be true. It's neither here nor there. Cassius Clay, I think he was already in mentally. All right. So that's the story. So Cassius Clay was already involved with the nation 3 years at least before he met Malcolm. But they did become very, very close. Like Malcolm was his mentor and his older brother, and his spiritual advisor. So he wanted to look out for his his brother. Come on down, spend time with me. All right, down here in Miami, you'll have a great time, enjoy the sun, so on and so forth. I didn't realize. I really didn't realize, like, the climate difference between up here in D.C. or New York or the East Coast and down in Miami. Last year, when Who Killed Malcolm X came out, I gave a speech down there at a talk, at Florida Memorial University in Miami, and it was like, like in the 30s up here in D.C. When I got down there, it was in the 90s. It was in the 90s in February. In February, all right? So, Malcolm went down there in the sunshine, take off all that winter clothes and with the kids and just enjoy himself. And then Betty goes back, and then he went back a second time right before the fight, and that's where the film picks up. Now, let me start wrapping this up a little bit. Because that was my main concern with it, that Malcolm was trying to recruit Muhammad Ali. Now, I gave this talk once before, and I got a little flippant. I got a little too cute for my own good, and I didn't really, go into the kind of detail that I should have. So let me just break this down for a minute. If I want to be fair to the filmmakers, I have to say this, that there may have been a conversation that happened that night that would give them the grounds to make this claim about Malcolm, that he was trying to recruit Muhammad Ali. It is true that Cassius Clay was feeling some pressure, apparently, from Malcolm. Because when Malcolm left the room or was in a different room, Cassius Clay confided to Jim Brown, and Jim Brown has, he's written about this. He was interviewed about this. There's a book by Thomas Hauser on Muhammad Ali, where he's quoted as saying, that he felt that Malcolm was perhaps trying to use him, or use him as some type of like bargaining chip, you know what I mean, to get back into the nation. And so, to give the filmmakers their credit, maybe they took this and they kind of stretched out a little bit, and they said, they made a whole storyline about it, that Malcolm was coming down to recruit Muhammad Ali. That's me being fair to them. All right. Let me just talk about that night. They didn't drink, all this drinking that's going on in the film. Muhammad Ali did not drink. You know what they drank? They drank milk. They drank milk with the ice cream. Okay, they drank milk. And Muhammad Ali was a very sweet young man. He was not, at that point, like out there chasing women and the whoremonger and all like that. He wasn't like that. He was a very sweet, innocent person. That didn't start happening until he got involved with his future manager, Elijah Muhammad's son, Herbert Muhammad, who went on to be called Jabba Muhammad. Okay, he was well known for loving the world. He's the one who introduced Muhammad Ali to Sonji Roy, who was out there, his first wife, who turned him out and got him involved in the life of the womanizing, what have you. That didn't really start happening until he met Herbert Muhammad. Okay, but that's another story. How do we know for a fact that Malcolm was not trying to recruit Muhammad Ali to join his new organization at that point? You know how we know that? Documents. We know from Malcolm's diary and letters that he was writing to Elijah Muhammad. And he was sending him tapes as well. He was pleading, right, petitioning Elijah Muhammad to accept him back. Okay? We know that. We know that's where his head was. Even though a certain part of him knew that he was going to have to break, that the Nation of Islam's apolitical stance, its refusal to actively engage the civil rights movement, all right, and its militant posture, all right, and the contradiction that was with what it actually did, or failed to do, or refused to do, which is be actively involved in the struggle. he knew at some point that he was going to have to break, even if there wasn't a baby scandal, even if Elijah Muhammad wasn't, involved with all of these women or what have you. He knew at some point, because he was really, really unhappy and dissatisfied with what happened with the Ronald Stokes shooting in the mosque in 1962. Okay, he was really bitter behind that. And that is where he started seeing the contradictions between the Nation of Islam's rhetoric, right, and its teachings and what it actually did. And so when you start seeing one contradiction, then other contradictions start to loom larger. Okay, Malcolm had heard about these babies and things throughout the years, but like he said, he blotted it out of his mind. But then when you start seeing other problems, other contradictions, other things make you go, that ain't right, man. Then you start giving your mind over to some of these other things you may have heard. Okay? So at some point, he knew he was going, but emotionally, he was still attached to the nation. He loved the nation. He built the nation. As Peniel Joseph said in our series, he built the Nation of Islam brand, and he wanted to save it. And he was torn. He was torn. He wanted back in, but he knew he wouldn't. So he's got one foot in and one foot out. But he's writing letters to Elijah Muhammad, petitioning him, pleading with him to let him back in. And these letters are in his notebook at the Schomburg Center in Harlem, in New York. We've seen these things. One of them is in, again, Manning Marable's book, page 282. Here's one of them. He said, feeling innocent. This is what Malcolm is writing in his notebook. Feeling innocent, have felt extremely persecuted, have felt lied about, unjustly and unnecessarily, forced to find some way to defend myself, to retaliate against those enemies without hurting you. Who's the you here? Elijah Muhammad. So Malcolm is attributing his problems in the nation with officials and other individuals, but he's absolving Elijah Muhammad from his problems. If I'm wrong in these feelings and conclusions, I'm at least being truthful and not hypocritical. Chance to serve Allah and you, meaning Elijah Muhammad. As my last letter stated, 1, I believe in our Savior. That's W.D. Farad. You and your program. I only know what you taught me, and am only what you have made me. Listen to how he's talking to Elijah. Listen to this. He's pouring his heart out. I have never exalted myself above you. I have never acted independently. I made a serious mistake by not coming straight to you, and that mistake led to my making others. I am sincerely sorry and pray to Allah for forgiveness. And I ask you to pray to Allah for my forgiveness. I cannot be an enemy to you without being an enemy to myself. I cannot speak against you without speaking against myself. Does that sound like somebody trying to leave the nation? Not at this point. So the idea that he went down to Miami to pull Cassius Clay in the nation, that's that's problematic. It's ahistorical. That's all we'll say. We'll say it's ahistorical. Now, somebody let me know what time it is. I don't want to go too long. Okay. Akil Fahad, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Akil Fahad's a great Malcolm X scholar, ladies and gentlemen. He has a lot to say. All right, let's wrap this up. Now, these historical issues aside, as a historian, I wish they weren't there. You know what I mean? I generally don't like these things based on a true story. You know, I generally don't like these things. Okay, but you know, putting some of these concerns to the side, the core element of the production, right? The core element of the film, I love it. I love it. Okay, I love it. 4 black men of fame and acclaim, 4 different strategies, approaches, or methods of advancing our cause, helping to solve our problems, ameliorate our condition. All these different approaches and how they debate the issue, right? How they challenge one another. When I watched this, it reminded me of the days when I was in college. Right? This is what we do. Okay, we in the dorm, or you know, we're in the house. We all live in a house. Students live. They rent a house, and you know, they rent out the whole house. Everybody lives in the house. 4 or 5 people live in the house, and at night we just philosophize, debate. That's what college. That's what, you know. It creates the environment. We have the leisure time. You know, your bills are paid, your rent is paid, your tuition is hopefully paid or will get paid or whatever. But you have leisure time, and you can. And you know, I really didn't. You know, you really don't appreciate this till you get out of college. You know, a place like Howard, you're around great minds, brothers and sisters. I mean, I went to school with the daughter of Bishop Desmond Tutu. I went to school with the daughter of Jesse Jackson. I mean, I went to school, you know, with people whose grandfather was the first black architect of a certain state. Okay, I mean, you know, and you're here, you're in this environment with this deep intellectual fervor and ferment, and that's why Howard, a place like Howard, and college in general, but I'm going to rep Howard right now, just keeps giving you leader after leader. Stokely Carmichael, Andrew Young, you know, Zora Neale Hurston. I mean, go on and on and on, man. It's just, you know, Thurgood Marshall, on and on and on. Why? Because we sit there and we debate the issue. We go back and forth. We get loud, okay? Sometimes there's drinking involved. Sometimes there's some other things involved. Other people, not me. Not me, of course. Not me. Other people. You know, people get nice, but they get philosophical and go back and forth. That's what this movie reminded me of. Okay? Black men using their mind and their talents to carve out a way for us. Boy, we need more of that. We need 1,000 times more of that, and less of the nonsense and the ignorance and the ratchetness and the foolishness that we see on television and in the movies. All right, and I loved it. I love seeing these brothers in suits, suave and sophisticated. Okay, handling their business. Bosses. Everybody in that room was a boss. Okay? And that's what we need to project to our youth. That's what we need to project to our young men and young women. Okay? Salute to Regina King for standing up for black men. All right? And making us look so great, and putting this out for our young men and our young boys to aspire to. I love that part of it. So, you know, I want you to know that. Sam Cooke thinks he wants to solve the problem through his music, okay? Understanding copyrights. You see this, you know? Understanding copyrights, understanding the music business. You see that. Jim We all know Jim. You know, I didn't know until Maurice White, the leader of Earth, Wind, and Fire, when he passed away, his biography came out. I did not know that Jim Brown was once the manager of Earth, Wind, and Fire. Did you know that? The Friends of Distinction also. Okay, he dated Jessica Cleaves, the singer in Friends of Distinction, who went on to Parliament Funkadelic. I mean, Jim Brown is a man of many talents. He's a conservative brother. He's a conservative guy. He's a conservative guy, but that's okay. We need everybody. All right, we're not throwing anybody out the race. They tried to throw Ice Cube out. Ice Cube's a sellout, man. No, you're a sellout. We're not throwing anybody out. All right? We're not throwing anybody out, brother. Yeah, we're not throwing anybody out. And that's what we see. You know, we all come from a different perspective. We all come from a different angle. And we need to respect one another. And that's what you saw in this thing, man. You see brothers crying. You see brothers arguing. But at the end of the day, they leave brothers. They leave as brothers. Man, what a wonderful message. What a wonderful message. Well, let me just throw this in here and then I'll wrap it up, because I had to say this. First of all, there would not have been any bodyguards. You see the Fruit of Islam. You see two brothers down there in Miami. That didn't happen, and it wouldn't have happened because Malcolm couldn't have bodyguards at that time. Okay, he was in a suspended class, and he wouldn't have had any bodyguards down there, and he didn't want any bodyguards down there. So I don't have to get all long-winded about that. So creative license there. Again, I didn't like all the drinking. They had Muhammad Ali drinking, Cassius Clay drinking, that. And let's see here. Oh, the question I got from the Muslims, and let me just clear this up. Did Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X actually make salat, or the Islamic prayer, right? The actual prayer, because it's known in the Nation of Islam, they have their own way of praying where they put their hands up and they face to the east, okay? But they don't perform the salat, what's called the salah, which is, the traditional Islamic prayer taught by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which has 4 positions: standing, which is called qiyam; bowing, which is called ruku'; prostration to the floor, which is called sajda; and then sitting, which is called jalsa. You have to do all those positions and recite the first chapter of the Quran, the Fatiha, for your prayer to be accepted, okay? The question becomes, did Malcolm know how to pray like that at that stage in his development? Because according to his autobiography, all right, he said he didn't know how to pray until April of 1964, April 13th, when he went on Hajj. When he went to Egypt on his way to Jeddah, he said, poor me, I didn't know how to pray. I've been in Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam all these years, 12 years, and I didn't even know how to pray and this and that. I wrote an article on this about, 10 or 12 years ago. You can pull it up. Maybe I'll put it in the description. It was called, "When Did Malcolm X Learn to Pray?" All right. Because you'll see in that article that the account in the autobiography, it can't be right. It can't be right. Okay. And there may have been some creative license taken in the autobiography. I mean, there is actually. I mean, there's a lot actually, in the autobiography. If you took my course on the autobiography of Malcolm X, you will learn, okay, about how this book was constructed, who are the real characters behind Laura and Shorty and all these other people in his life, right? Sophia, you learn all of that, okay? His years in Lansing and Boston, and I go into great detail. But so you see that creative license was taken in this book as well. So the question of Malcolm making prayer, I wrote an article on that. It's called "When Did Malcolm Learn to Pray?" The long and the short of it is, the first time Malcolm went to Africa and the Middle East was July of 1964, July 4th to July 21st, 1959, pardon me, 1959. All right. Now, in that article, I found it to be inconceivable that Malcolm would go to the Muslim world and not know how to at least make the Islamic prayer, the Salah. Okay? You'll notice in this book, he only talks about that trip for like a very short paragraph. And he just said, I went to Egypt, Sudan, right? Nigeria, Ghana, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. He doesn't really tell you much. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is this. The truth of the matter is, Malcolm didn't know how to make salah. All right? He didn't know. And he was embarrassed when he went on that trip. And he was also challenged on his beliefs. You all teach that this man, Elijah Muhammad, is a prophet of God, is a messenger of God, after Prophet Muhammad of Arabia, the prophet of Islam, peace be upon him. No, that's incorrect. He was challenged, just like he was challenged here in the United States. He was challenged by people at the UN who he had a good relationship with, the Muslim diplomats. He was challenged by the small number, of Muslim students on the university campuses from the Muslim countries. He was challenged all the time on that. All the time he was challenged. He was challenged by the Imam of State Street in Brooklyn. He was challenged by Dakota Stanton, all right, and her husband. I mean, he was challenged all over the place. So you find a letter in the Schomburg, once again, great collection, probably the best collection of material on the life of Malcolm X. You find there a letter that Malcolm wrote to Elijah Muhammad around this time, 59, 60. I have to go back and look at the date. We said, basically, man, we've got to step up our prayer game. We have to get these people to know how to pray. I mean, because Malcolm was stung when he went to the Muslim world and he couldn't even recite the Fatiha. It means he couldn't even lead the prayer. All right? So over the years, between 59 and April of 64, when he goes on hard, yeah, you can best believe he learned how to make the prayer. And you know how I know? Because we have now a smoking gun. 2005, there was an exhibition at the Schomburg called Malcolm X, A Search for Truth. It coincided with his 80th birthday. And in that exhibition was a photograph that we had never seen before. And it was a picture of Malcolm X making salah during his Nation of Islam years. And you've seen it. If you just put it in, you'll see the picture. It's kind of well known now, but it's clearly a Nation of Islam picture. Malcolm is standing in a bathrobe, and he's got his hands on his chest, which is the Qiyam position. All right, there's a prayer rug in front of him. You say, well, how do we know it was from the Nation of Islam period? Very easy. Malcolm has no facial hair. He's got that Nation of Islam bald head and a clean face. After he went on Hajj, he never was clean shaven again. All right, he was practicing the Sunnah. He was keeping a little goatee, little beard. He had his hair was growing out like a fro, what have you. This was clearly a photograph from the Nation of Islam period. Maybe he was just getting ready to break. We don't know. But what's clear to me is before he got to Mecca, April of 1964, he knew how to make salah. And there are other accounts of that evening between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm that say they actually made the full salah, Allahu Akbar, and Qiyam, Ruku, Sajda, Jalsa, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yes. So I said in another talk that it was possible, but not probable. Now I say it's probable. It's more than likely they did, because there's other evidence. People have brought other evidence to me. There were other witnesses to it that spoke about it. So yes, it's absolutely possible. I say probable now. That's my position on that. Yeah, and one more thing, and I'll be done. Elijah Muhammad pulled a power play on Malcolm. Malcolm did believe that Muhammad Ali could help him restore his position in the nation. He really wanted to, go back to the old days. I mean, he loved the nation. He wanted it to survive, and he wanted to go back with Muhammad Ali, with Ali. Elijah Muhammad pulled a power play. What happened was, after he won the fight, the very next day was Savior's Day. I mentioned that earlier, the annual convention. Cassius Clay flew to Chicago, and before the whole crowd, he formally announced that he was a member of the Nation of Islam. He was a black Muslim for the whole crowd. All right. Now, contrary was in the movie, and I got jammed up a little bit on this too. That's how you, like I say, extracting I had to go back to the books and look at it. Contrary to the movie, he did not get the name Muhammad Ali at the convention. Right? He got that in early March 6th, right? So the next month. But he did announce that he was part of the nation. And then what he did was he drove to New York and hung out with Malcolm. That's you see all these famous pictures of Malcolm going around. Malcolm is going around New York with the champ, right? And he's basking in the glow of the moment. Muhammad Ali took out some rooms in the Hotel Teresa. All right, they had a little informal press conference, in which he said he was thinking about moving to New York. All right, he said, "Man, I need a big city to accommodate me, so to speak." Right, and this was seen as very dangerous to the nation, because they started to see that they maybe had mismanaged the relationship between Malcolm and Muhammad Ali, or Cassius Clay at that time. Because what started happening was the newspapers started printing articles around March 2nd, two Chicago newspapers, the Tribune and the Chicago Defender, I believe it was Defender, published an article that basically said, Cassius Clay is meeting secretly with Malcolm X to possibly start their own group. And this sent Chicago, scurrying, all right? And the hatred of Malcolm went up to a whole nother level. And it's that time, around March 6th, that Elijah Muhammad pulled a power play. He, in a radio station, in Chicago and New York, he played one of his tapes in which he said that Clay is not a good name for you. It's not a righteous name. He said, I am going to give you the name Muhammad Ali. If you will accept it and choose to follow me forever, blah, blah, blah. And of course, Clay is overwhelmed, and Malcolm understood that as, a power move, where now, there's no way in the world. All they've got to do now is turn Clay against Muhammad Ali now. Just turn him against Malcolm, because he's not going anywhere now. He's totally invested in it now. and all the forces start to move into play to destroy Malcolm. It's around this time, this whole era, this time here, that the nation sends Brother Lukman, to wire Malcolm's car, to blow it up. And even then, it still hadn't dawned. I mean, it still hadn't, the finality of the hour hadn't really settled in. So it took his assistant, James 67X, who told him, he said, brother, you have fallen out of favor with Mr. Muhammad. I would hope that you would, come back into favor with him. But as it stands, you are not coming back in the nation. Malcolm picked James up in his car, his Oldsmobile, and drove him around to one of the parks there in New York. And Malcolm was going on and on about the corruption, about the babies, right? How he didn't get a trial before his community, and so on and so forth. And James said, I just made it plain to him. He said, brother, they're going to kill you. They want to kill you. And just Malcolm just went quiet, and it hit him. And he knew he had to do what he had to do, So, it's a sad story. And I talk about Malcolm. I mean, that's the reason why I'm, even watch the film, because I mean, I'm a Malcolm historian, but so that's what I focus on. This was meant to be a full-blown review of the film, but just my take on those related to Malcolm and Muhammad Ali. The film talked about colorism and Malcolm's light complexion, and it has Jim Brown saying, "Why you light-skinned brothers? You light-skinned, you always are the most militant. You always go the hardest and whatever." That's a conversation we could have in our community. You notice a lot of our activists, light-skinned or mixed parentage or what have you. You'll notice a lot of them are the most militant, maybe have something to prove. That came up in the film. I mean, I'm not just making this up. It's a tough conversation, it's uncomfortable, but it's a point of conversation in the film. With that, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. I don't know how long this has gone, but if you have any questions about it, if I haven't answered any of your questions, hey, Carol, how you doing? Carol Sawyer. You can always hit me up on Facebook. Guys, if you enjoyed tonight's talk, all you have to do is, send me a comment. Let me know that you liked it. If you want to support this kind of comment, you can just send something to my Cash App. It's the $ Abdur Muhammad, ABDUR, not LR, MUHAMMAD. Send me something. Let me know that you appreciate this content. Let you know that Black History Month, I'm going to be bringing it. I'm going to be talking about a lot of things. One of the things I'm going to be talking about, I'll do a little review of this new book, The Dead Are Rising, the new acclaimed biography of Brother Malcolm. Isn't it interesting that Brother Malcolm is, even though it's Martin Luther King's birthday, his holiday, but people are not quoting King these days. They're quoting Malcolm. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? That would never been the case when I was in college in my day. No, it was all about King. We were fighting to get the King holiday. But think about it. In we've had now, last year, the Godfather of Harlem, right? Who Killed Malcolm X? This book by Les Payne, which is, winning all kinds of awards and stuff, all right, that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you my view of it, okay? And now this film, A Night in Miami. Isn't that something? So there's been something of a revival in the interest of Malcolm and his influence and his impact. It's a great thing. It's a great thing to watch, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Look out for Black History Month. I'm going to be coming. And also, there's going to be some big news coming down the line relating to some Malcolm materials. We're getting ready to open up a whole new vista of scholarship. We're working on something really big, acquiring a big collection. So I don't want to talk too much about it, but there's going to be some big things. Also, we do expect as well, once this COVID relents and we start getting these vaccines and what have you, that we're going to start to go into motion on possibly season two of Who Killed Malcolm X. A lot to talk about. There's still a lot to talk about in the story. You'll notice, what was it, about a month ago, I published for the first time The Face of Wilbur McKinley, the assassin who sat in the back, who created the misdirection. Nigga, get your hand out my pocket! And threw the smoke bomb down. Almost 60 years, we have never seen that man's face, okay, until I published it a month ago. And I've got more. And it could be poured into the season two. That's what I'm kind of holding back some of the stuff. I've got some stuff that's going to blow your top off. Believe me. So, brothers and sisters, I want to bring it to a close. Thank you. It's been my pleasure to spend some time with you. I hope you benefited from this talk. I think I've said everything I needed to say. It's been a great time. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you again. I'm going to be becoming more and more frequent. All right. Again, you can send something to the Cash App. I greatly appreciate it. I am an independent scholar. I'm not at any university. I don't have tenure anywhere. I just do my thing and keep making history. All right. So with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to bring it to a close. Get with me. Send me a comment. Let me know you loved it, you appreciate it, you hated it. I'm out there. Whatever your thoughts are, it doesn't matter to me. I love you anyway. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.